In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Islam straight from the source. We ask you to listen with an open heart and an open mind. Our hope is that these presentations will help you understand what Islam is really all about. In this session, we will talk about the life of the Prophet. Who was Muhammad? What was he like? And what did he preach? The stages of the Prophet's life. Noble youth. Revelation begins. Open preaching. Bitter persecution. A new beginning. The fight for survival. Truce and victory. And the farewell sermon. The noble youth. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born in 570 CE. His father died before he was born, and his mother died when he was only 6. He was taken in under the care of his uncle, Abu Talib. Muhammad grew up in a pagan, vice-ridden society, but he was not like those around him. He spoke with kindness, and he did not drink or gamble or chase after women. His honesty was so famous he was called as-Sadiq al-Amin, which means the truthful, the trustworthy. He rejected idolatry and lived a simple and humble life. He was compassionate to the poor, the widows, and the orphans. As a youth, he traveled with his uncle in the caravans to Syria. He proved himself a thoughtful businessman and a successful caravan leader. His business skill and honest reputation attracted the attention of Khadija, a twice-widowed noble of Mecca. As a test, she hired him to lead one of her caravans. Impressed by his great character, she proposed marriage to him, and he accepted. Even though she was 15 years older than him, they were happy throughout their 26 years together. Muhammad continued to lead a simple and frugal life. He would often retreat to the mountains to contemplate, sometimes spending the entire month of Ramadan in the cave of Hira just outside of Mecca. Revelation begins, years 0 through 3. Muhammad received the first revelation when he was 40 years old, in the year 610 CE. One night, while in his usual cave during the month of Ramadan, an angel appeared and said, "Read." Muhammad was puzzled. He replied, "I cannot read." The angel enveloped him, pressing so hard he thought he would die. Then it released him and said, "Read." Shaken, Muhammad replied, "I cannot read." The angel enveloped him again, pressing even harder than before. Then it released him and commanded him to read. Gasping for breath, Muhammad replied, "What should I read?" Then the angel recited,
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
Muhammad ran from the cave in fright, but he heard the same thundering voice say, "O Muhammad, you are the messenger of God, and I am Gabriel." He raised his eyes and saw the angel filling the horizon. Again the angel spoke, "O Muhammad, you are the messenger of God, and I am Gabriel." Then the angel vanished. Muhammad hurried to Khadija, crying out, "Cover me, cover me." After his fear had passed, he explained what happened and said, "I fear some evil has befallen me." She consoled him, saying, "God would never disgrace you. You keep ties with your relatives, you assist the poor, you are generous to your guests, and you help the afflicted." The next day, she took him to her cousin Waraqa ibn Nawfal, a very old man who knew the scriptures of the Jews and Christians. After hearing the story, he told them that the angel who came to Muhammad was the same one that had come to Moses, and that Muhammad had been chosen to be God's messenger. For the first 3 years, Muhammad preached only to his family and his close friends in secret. Khadija was the first Muslim. Other early converts included Abu Bakr, his lifelong friend, Ali, his young cousin, and Zayd, his adopted son. Open preaching, years 3 to 5. At the end of the 3rd year, the command came to preach in public. Muhammad stood up to address his tribe, calling the people to him. When they had gathered, he asked them, "O people of Quraysh, if I were to tell you that I see horsemen on the other side of this hill, would you believe me?" They replied, "Of course. We have never known you to tell a lie." He said, "So know that I warn you of a severe punishment, unless you affirm that there is no God but God." When he began to condemn their idolatry, his tribe then became actively hostile, mocking him and persecuting his disciples. As conversions continued, the Quraysh became increasingly alarmed at Islam's growth. This new religion posed a great threat to the power of the Quraysh over Mecca. Quraysh was the dominant tribe in Arabia, and Islam challenged this position of leadership. More importantly, the teachings of Islam attacked the lifestyle of the rich and the powerful. For this reason, the early Muslims were insulted, imprisoned, tortured, and even killed. Eventually, in the 5th year of revelation, Muhammad advised his weaker followers to escape to Abyssinia, a land ruled by a just Christian king. This caused Quraysh to try to bring the Prophet to a compromise. They offered to accept his religion if he would accept their idols. Muhammad, peace be upon him, refused. They offered to make him their king, to give him riches and women if he would give up attacking idolatry. Muhammad, peace be upon him, continued to refuse. When their bribes didn't work, the Quraysh increased their attacks on the Muslims. Bitter persecution, years 6 to 9. In the 7th year of revelation, the Quraysh decided to try a different tactic to stop the spread of Islam. The Qurayshi warriors rounded up and forcibly evicted the Muslims from their homes. All Muslims, and even their non-Muslim relatives, were driven into a barren valley just outside the city. With barely the clothes on their back and few supplies, several hundred men, women, and children were cast into the harsh desert, Muhammad among them. Food supplies were cut off, and all trade and social contact with Muslims were forbidden. The Quraysh demanded Muhammad, peace be upon him, be handed over for punishment. But his clan refused to turn him over. So the Muslims remained in exile for 3 more years. After this time, some tribal leaders had pity for the Muslims, so they were allowed back into the city. But many had died from the strain of living in exile, including Muhammad's wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib. With sorrow, Muhammad continued his preaching. Hoping to find a friendlier audience, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Zayd went to the people of Ta'if to invite them to Islam. But the tribal leaders scorned them, and they sent the rabble to pelt them with stones, forcing them to seek refuge in a nearby orchard. Zayd later narrated how Muhammad, peace be upon him, turned to his Lord and prayed, "O my Lord, to you I complain of my weakness and inability, and of the humiliation I receive. O most gracious and merciful, you are the Lord of the weak, and you are my Lord. To whom do you leave me? To a stranger who abuses me, or to an enemy who overpowers me? So long as you are not displeased with me, I do not care what I face. Your forgiveness is all that matters to me. I seek refuge in the glory of your light, which dispels the darkness and sustains this world and the hereafter, from incurring your wrath or earning your anger. To you I submit until you are pleased. There is no power and no might except by you. The Quraysh continued their opposition, but Muhammad endured and continued preaching and teaching. In addition to faith and worship, Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught his followers ethics and manners, as well as stories of the previous prophets. A new beginning, years 11 to 12. In the 11th year of revelation, the people of Yathrib, a city over 200 miles away, heard about the religion of Islam. Yathrib had several Jewish tribes whose rabbis had often spoken to the pagan Arabs about a prophet that was soon to come on this land. When the pilgrims from Yathrib saw Muhammad, peace be upon him, they recognized him as the prophet whom the Jewish rabbis had described. They believed in him and swore allegiance to him. In the following year, the new Muslims from Yathrib came to pledge their support to the prophet. They invited him to their city, swearing to defend him as they would defend their own wives and children. Muhammad, peace be upon him, agreed, and soon the Muslims began leaving Mecca in small groups. This migration was called the Hijrah, and it actually marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. When his tribe found out about this, they decided to kill Muhammad before he became more influential. The night appointed for his murder was the same night that the Prophet received God's command to make the Hijrah himself. The Prophet let his cousin, Ali, sleep in his home as a decoy, which allowed him to evade the Quraysh assassins. The Prophet, peace be upon him, joined Abu Bakr outside the city and began their journey to Yathrib. After traveling for many days, the Prophet and Abu Bakr reached Yathrib, and the city was renamed Medina. It was there that the Muslims built their first mosque. The Prophet also established a pact of mutual assistance between the Jews, the Muslims, and the pagans of Medina. This became the Charter of Medina, and it outlined each group's rights and responsibilities and described the terms for the common defense of the city. The fight for survival, years 1 to 5 after Hijrah. Soon after this mass migration, an ultimatum was sent to Medina. Quraysh demanded the extradition of the Muslims, or war would be declared against all Medina. It was at this time that the Prophet received the first revelation allowing the Muslims to fight.
أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم بغير حق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا ولينصرن الله من ينصره إن الله لقوي عزيز.
Because of this threat of war, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sent out several small expeditions. Their primary purpose was to win over other tribes to an alliance with Medina, or to at least dissuade them from siding with Quraysh. Their secondary purpose was to disrupt the Meccan caravans to limit their war efforts against the Muslims. Their secondary purpose was to disrupt the Meccan caravans to limit their war effort against the Muslims. More revelations came down detailing the rules of engagement.
وقاتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ويكون الدين لله فإن انتهوا فلا عدوان إلا على الظالمين.
In the second year of the Hijrah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, led 314 men against a Meccan caravan to reclaim what had been taken from the Muslims. The Quraysh sent an army of 1,000 against the Prophet. They met at the oasis of Badr, and the battle ended in a surprising and total victory for the Muslims. In the next year, the Meccans invaded Medina to avenge their defeat at Badr. They were now 3,000 strong, while the Muslim force was about 700. Initially, the Muslims were winning the battle, pushing back the Meccan army. However, the archers who were stationed as reserves deserted their posts, so the Meccan cavalry was able to circle the Muslims and charge from behind. Attacked from both sides and taking many casualties, the Muslims were forced to retreat to the mountain of Uhud. Although the Quraysh did not kill the Prophet, they returned to Mecca, having satisfied their wounded pride. The Meccan victory emboldened the surrounding Arab tribes to attack Medina, so the Muslims spent most of the next year fighting many minor skirmishes against marauders. In addition, the Quraysh were busy inciting the Arab tribes of the north, the south, and the east to put an end to the Muslims once and for all. Quraysh mobilized over 10,000 fighters for a concerted invasion of Medina. In the 5th year of the Hijrah, the Muslims dug a trench around the city and prepared for a siege. The Muslims numbered less than 3,000. The siege lasted almost 4 weeks because the invaders were repelled each time they tried crossing the trench. After the 3rd week, the invaders persuaded Bani Qurayza in Medina to betray their pact with Muhammad, peace be upon him. They plotted to attack the city from the inside at the same time the invaders attacked from the outside. However, a recent convert infiltrated the invading camp and sowed distrust among the factions. This delayed the attack and broke the siege as each faction secretly departed one by one. Then, the Muslims besieged the treacherous Qurayza tribe until they surrendered unconditionally. This battle caused the Meccans to lose much of their prestige, so Islam began to spread in the region. Truce and Victory, years 6 to 9 after Hijrah. In the 6th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had a vision of entering the sacred sanctuary in Mecca. So he prepared to go on the pilgrimage. He and a company of 1,400 set out as pilgrims unarmed. To make sure Quraysh didn't attack them, they camped outside the city at the oasis of Hudaybiyah. After ensuring the Muslims were really unarmed, the Quraysh began negotiations, and the truce of Hudaybiyah was signed. The treaty stipulated, there shall be peace between Mecca and Medina for 10 years. Any tribe or person was free to join either party or make an alliance with it. If a Qurayshi from Mecca leaves for Medina without their guardian's permission, they will be sent back to their guardian in Mecca. If a Muslim from Medina leaves for Mecca, they shall not be sent back to the Prophet in Medina. The Muslims shall not enter Mecca this year, but they could enter unarmed the following year. There was dismay among the Muslims at these unfair terms. However, this truce proved to be the greatest victory the Muslims ever achieved. War had been a barrier between Islam and the pagan tribes, But now Muslim and pagan could meet and talk without any fear of Quraysh intervention or aggression. The number of converts in the next 2 years was over 4 times greater than the number who entered Islam in all the previous 19 years combined. In the 8th year of the Hijrah, a tribe allied with Quraysh attacked a tribe allied with the Prophet, peace be upon him. The chief of Quraysh hurried to Medina to ask that the treaty be extended. But word had already reached Medina, and so the truce was broken. The Prophet issued a call to arms, and over 10,000 Muslims answered his call. When the Prophet and his army arrived at Mecca, the Quraysh were so surprised at their number that they offered almost no resistance. The Prophet entered as a conqueror, and the people of Mecca feared vengeance for what they had done to the Prophet and his followers. To their surprise and relief, the Prophet, peace be upon him, forgave all his enemies, and all of Mecca rushed to swear allegiance to him. The Prophet destroyed all the idols which were in the sanctuary, saying, "Truth has come and falsehood has vanished away." Then the call to prayer was proclaimed in Mecca. In the 9th year of the Hijrah, deputations came from all parts of Arabia to swear allegiance to the Prophet, peace be upon him. He had become the de facto emperor of Arabia, but his humble way of life still remained. The Prophet still patched his own clothes, cobbled his own shoes, and slept on a straw mat. The Farewell Sermon, Year 10 after Hijrah. In the 10th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet announced his pilgrimage. At the last gathering during the Hajj, the Prophet's final sermon was delivered in the valley of Arafah to over 100,000 pilgrims. O people, lend me an attentive ear, for I know not if after this year I shall ever be amongst you again. So listen to what I say to you carefully, and take these words to those who could not be here today. O people, just as you regard this month, this day, and this city as sacred, so regard the life and property of every Muslim as sacred. Return the goods entrusted to you to their rightful owners. Harm none, so that none harm you. Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and that he will indeed reckon your deeds. God has forbidden you to take usury. Therefore, all interest debts from now on are forgiven. Beware of Satan for the safety of your religion. He has lost all hopes that he will be able to lead you astray in big things. So beware of following him in small things. O people, it is true that you have rights over your women, but they also have rights over you. If they abide by your rights, then to them belongs the right to be fed and clothed in kindness. Treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your dependents. You took them as a trust from God, enjoying their company only by God's words. It is your right that they do not befriend anyone of whom you disapprove, and that they do not commit adultery. O people, listen to me well. Worship God, say the 5 daily prayers, fast during the month of Ramadan, give charity, and perform pilgrimage if you can afford it. Know that all Muslims are brethren. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab is no better than a non-Arab, and a non-Arab is no better than an Arab, and a white is no better than a black, and a black is no better than a white, except by piety and good deeds. Remember, one day you will appear before God and answer for your deeds. So beware. Do not go astray from the path after my death. O people, no prophet or messenger will come after me, and no true faith will be born. Reason well, O people, and understand my words. I leave behind me 2 things, the Quran and my example, and if you follow these, you will never go astray. All those who listen to me shall pass on my words to others, and those to others again, that perhaps the last ones understand my words better than those who listen to me directly. Be my witness, O God, that I have conveyed your message to your servants." Then revelation descended on the Prophet, and he recited,
اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا.
1 month later, the Prophet, peace be upon him, became ill. 2 months after that, he passed away. He was 63 years old. Many could not believe that he had died. It was Abu Bakr who said to the congregation, "If any worshipped Muhammad, then know that Muhammad has died. But if any worshipped God, then know that God is alive and never dies." And then he recited from the Quran,
وما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل أفإن مات أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه فلن يضر الله شيئا وسيجزي الله الشاكرين. وما كان لنفس أن تموت إلا بإذن الله كتابا مؤجلا ومن يرد ثواب الدنيا نؤته منها ومن يرد ثواب الآخرة نؤته منها وسنجزي الشاكرين.
In conclusion, Muhammad is regarded as God's final messenger by over 1.6 billion people around the world. Regardless of his life situation, the Prophet's character was always exemplary, humble, gentle, and patient. Black and white, red and yellow, the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, come from all races and all ethnicities. Many critics of Islam say that it is a violent religion that spread at the tip of a sword. We hope that knowing the Prophet's full story refutes that perception, providing an accurate understanding of who Muhammad, peace be upon him, really was. For more information, or to submit questions you may have, visit us at www.whatwouldAmuslimsay.net and click Contact. Thank you all for listening, and may peace be with you.